Here following an officer-involved shooting in Fort Worth that left one person dead. This happened around 2:30 a.m. Police tell us they were responding to a report of an open house on Allen Avenue near Mississippi Avenue. Investigators offering very little information so far this morning. Officers have not said how the person died exactly, only that it happened inside the home. Police say they plan to release more details later today.
WFAA News.
Thank you for joining us here on Facebook and YouTube. We normally on WFAA have a newscast at 6, but due to college football, it has been preempted. So for the next few minutes, we hope to keep you up to date on a big story that so many of you are talking about right now. A woman was shot and killed in her home by a Fort Worth police officer around 2 this morning. Now, we know a lot of you have questions, and we'd like to hear those. You can leave them in the comments below, and we'll try to get as many of them answered as we can.
Yeah, pretty big turnout. A lot of people want to know exactly what happened here early this morning. It happened here at this home on East Allen and Mississippi. Right now you can see friends and loved ones are here at the residence supporting one another, trying to make sense of this terrible tragedy. Now, neighbors say 28-year-old Atatiana Jefferson lived here with her 8-year-old nephew. Around 2:30 this morning, and neighbors saw the door open and the lights on. He called a non-emergency line asking police to come see if neighbors were okay. We're about to show you what happened next. This is the body cam footage provided by Fort Worth Police in its entirety.
Put your hands up! Show me your hands!
Now, in that video, you never hear the police officer identify himself. He simply goes through a gate into the backyard, then sees a figure in the window, and then in a span of about 3 seconds, you saw it there, he shouts the orders, put your hands up, show me your hands, show me your hands, and almost immediately after, that deadly shot rings out. Now, Fort Worth police have not identified that officer, but describe him as a white man who has been with the department since April of last year. Now, remember, this all started with a call from for a welfare check from a neighbor who says police were supposed to come to make sure Jefferson was okay, not to put her in harm's way.
I explained on the call that there wasn't any violence going on, any type of arguments going on. It was simply a concern for my neighbor. I'm still kind of broken and shocked. They tell me I shouldn't feel bad, but I feel bad because had I not called the police department, she would probably still be alive today. So I do feel a little weight on me for that, making that call.
Now, the officer has been placed on administrative leave. The department says all of the evidence will be handed over to the district attorney's office to see if any criminal charges will follow. And I can tell you that is what a lot of friends, relatives, and neighbors are calling for here at this moment. They say Jefferson had every right to be inside her home and that she posed absolutely no threat to that officer. Back to you.
Eric, a lot of people who are watching this right now on Facebook are expressing how sad this is. I'm sure you've been hearing that from neighbors. But I also want to get back to the man who called to report this wellness check. Again, a non-emergency number. And he did stress, correct, that he was expecting this just to be a check. Did he also talk about his experience hearing this confrontation happen? Did he hear the gunshots? Do we know that? The gunshot, excuse me.
Yes, in fact, he did. He was paying very close attention. He wanted, again, to make sure that his neighbors were safe. So he called the police. He said a number of officers arrived, but they did not park in front of the house. He says that then he just kind of was monitoring, watching. He heard a gunshot, and he didn't know what had happened. And then a few moments later, a lot of other police officers arrived on the scene. He said he did not know who had fired the shot, who had been struck, if that person, had survived. He didn't know for quite some time, and that's what really seems to have bothered him is he didn't know, and just kind of the emotion in his voice when he was saying that he almost wishes he hadn't made that call, but of course in that moment he could not have foreseen what took place here early this morning.
Sure. Eric Alvarez for us live in Fort Worth. Eric, thank you for that update. Fort Worth Mayor Betsy Price sent out this statement today. Writing a statement like this is tragic and something that should never be necessary. A young woman has lost her life, leaving her family in unbelievable grief. All of Fort Worth must surround Atatiana Jefferson's family with prayers, love, and support. Chief Krause and his command staff are acting with immediacy and transparency to conduct a complete and thorough investigation. More details are forthcoming, and the Tarrant County District Attorney Law Enforcement Incident Team Office will ultimately receive this case. Now, we are already starting to see community members react to this shooting, and to say that they are angry would definitely be an understatement.
It's sad enough that our young men are being killed. But when our women are not safe, as men in our community, we are called to stand up and protect the women in our community. That's right. And when our women are not safe, then it's going to get to a point that we can no longer be passive. There you go. At some point, we have to fight aggression with aggression. As pastors and Christians, yes, we're called to love. We're called to forgive. But we're not called to be fools. That's right. And it's time out for you continue to kill the people in our neighborhood and expect us to be passive. So again, I'm with Bishop Kirkland. When I first got involved with this is what I said. What bothers me with us as a community is 2 or 3 weeks we'll be upset, we'll be angry, and then we'll go on with life. But what we're finding out, if we stop for 2 or 3 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks later, somebody else may be killed. So we got to stand up as a community and let them know that we're sick and tired of our young ladies being killed. We're sick and tired of our sons being killed. And the thing with this, you can't say she had a gun in her hand. It don't matter if she did, because in all actuality, if the castle doctrine could have stood in the Ambergaga trial, then it could have stood in this one. She had the right to protect herself if she's in her own house. And if you're outside of my house, walking outside of my window, and there is a gun in my house, as a person that has property and is a rightful property owner, I have a right to protect myself. So I want to find out how you're going to twist this one, how you're going to turn this one to try and make it seem as though it's justified for you killing this lady in her house. And the next thing I would like to say to Chief Krause, Mayor Betsy Price, and all the city officials, we're not asking for a suspension. And I'm saying as a community, we're not asking for a suspension. We're asking for termination. We're not going to allow you to tell us he got suspended for 30 days and we applaud you and say, job well done. This person, whoever it is, male or female, does not need to be on the streets. Because if that was me and I killed somebody that was in their own house, me knowing from dealing with the system, y'all gonna put me in prison and put me in there for a long time. So we cannot allow this woman to do this or this man to do this, keep their job, and then not label them as what they are, and that is a murderer. That's right. So again, we're calling on our communities to understand, and I'm with Bishop. No, we're not here to sell our people out. No, we're gonna fight hand, feet, tooth and nail for our communities. Because in all actuality, I think that's what people miss. We just like y'all. That's it. I don't care how many tables we go sit at. If they catch me at the wrong time in the wrong place, it could be Pastor Rodney McIntosh that get killed, just like they done this woman.
Now, at this point, I want to bring Kevin Reese into the conversation. He's been hearing from neighbors and also those faith leaders in the community we just heard from. Kevin, it seems that the anger has really just grown as we see the video and get more information about what happened here.
And it continues to grow with the relative silence from the Fort Worth Police Department. That's what's bothering folks the most right now. I want to give you a vantage point where we are right at this moment. We are at the side of the house. This is where the officers approached, walked along the side of this, which is actually one of the nicer houses in this neighborhood, walked through that fence into the backyard, and that's where that single shot was fired. What bothers the neighbors right now, and you're going to hear from more of them in a moment, is there are no police here right now. They have released a portion of that body cam video. They've released one photo of a gun inside that house after the fact. They've had a written press release, but that is it at this point. No news conference has been called. Fort Worth Police say they will not be talking anytime soon. So community leaders, for a number of reasons, including those, are incensed, and of course, they are making obvious comparisons to the death of Botham Jean in Dallas. This is part of what those community leaders had to say earlier today.
If the officer is at fault, then the officer must suffer the consequences, because you cannot continue to kill people and justify it because they're law enforcement.
So our concern is this. Number one is that as in Dallas in Botham Jean's case, police entering the house. This time the police took it a step further, and she was in her own place and shot and killed her. That is not only unacceptable, that's murder. That's right. The Fort Worth police murdered this woman. Don't paint this sister as no villain. That's right. If you do that, if you paint this sister as a villain, this city gonna have hell to pay. Don't paint the sister as no villain. They're the ones who murdered. They murdered her, and there's no excuse for it. None. That's it.
I call on the police department to be totally transparent, starting immediately.
to not hide anything, to not withhold anything from the community of Fort Worth. We're tired of this, and it's going to stop.
And we're sick and tired of being sick and tired, and we're going to keep on talking about this until justice happens. We're crying out to the Lord. Our only recourse at this point is for God Almighty to hear our cry and come see about us.
And so, yes, community leaders have spoken out already today. We do expect more reaction here as the night goes on. But again, according to what the neighbors have told us, those officers approached with no lights, no sirens, parked around the corner and walked up to the house in the dark. So people want more answers. They want more words from the Fort Worth Police Department right now that they are not getting. And we'll continue to ask those questions as the night goes on and as this investigation gets underway. Marie, back to you.
Kevin in Fort Worth for us. Kevin Reese, thank you so much. And it's true, like he said, we're hearing from so many of you in these comments right here, asking about procedure, asking about police response. What is normal when someone is walking up to a house? Does the type of phone call, as it was called in on this non-emergency number, make a difference here? Those are the questions we're asking. We're looking for that from not only Fort Worth Police, but other law enforcement experts. We're working to bring you that tonight. And as we continue our coverage both online and on air at WFAA, the face of Atatiana Jefferson, shot and killed in her home by a Fort Worth police officer early this morning. Now, we know a lot of you have questions about this case, and we have been working all day to find out what we can. This story begins on the south side of Fort Worth on East Allen Avenue. That is where our Eric Alvarez is live tonight to walk us through what happened.
Well, friends and family are understandably outraged tonight. They are demanding answers. They are demanding justice for that young woman who was shot and killed here inside her own home by a police officer that was called here to see if she needed help.
Put your hands up. Show me your hands.
A welfare check gone horribly wrong. In this body cam footage released by the Fort Worth Police Department, you do not hear the officer identify himself as he passes a window and steps through a gate into the backyard. He then sees a figure in a window, draws his gun, and fires, less than 3 seconds after demanding to see the person's hands. That person is 28-year-old Atatiana Jefferson, who lived in the home with her 8-year-old nephew.
The family is understandably brokenhearted.
Attorney Lee Merritt, who spoke to Jefferson's family, says the pair were playing video games early in the morning.
And they heard someone creeping around outside. She went to investigate at the window. An officer was on the other side who shouted commands, and before she had a moment to respond, he shot her to death.
So how did this happen? Around 2:30 a.m. Saturday, Jefferson's neighbor noticed the door open and the lights on. He called a non-emergency line asking for police to perform a welfare check.
I'm still kind of broken and shocked.
James Smith tells WFAA officers parked around the corner arrived at the house with no lights, no sirens, and did not announce their presence. He called police so they would make sure Jefferson and her nephew were safe. He never expected police to put them in danger.
They tell me I shouldn't feel bad, but I feel bad because had I not called the police department, she would probably still be alive today. So I do feel a little weight on me for that, making that call.
Fort Worth police have not released the name of the officer, but describe him as a white man who has been with the department since April of last year. The officer has been placed on administrative leave. The department says all of the evidence will be handed over to the district attorney's office to see if any criminal charges will follow. And that is exactly what friends, family, and neighbors are calling for tonight. I can tell you throughout the day, dozens of people have stopped by this house offering support to the family of that young woman, which they say had every right to be in her own home and posed no threat to that officer. Live in Fort Worth, I'm Eric Alvarez.
Eric, thank you. Fort Worth Mayor Betsy Price sent out a statement in response to this shooting today, saying writing a statement like this is tragic and something that should never be necessary. A young woman has lost her life, leaving her family in unbelievable grief. All of Fort Worth must surround Atatiana Jefferson's family with prayers, love, and support. Chief Krause and his command staff are acting with immediacy and transparency to conduct a complete and thorough investigation. More details are forthcoming, and the Tarrant County District Attorney Law Enforcement Incident Team Office will ultimately receive this case.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight for CBS 11 News at 10. Our top story tonight, A woman is dead after being shot and killed in her own home by a Fort Worth police officer. The shooting happened around 2:30 this morning in the 1200 block of East Allen Avenue, just to the east of 35W. Let's go straight to Nicole Jacobs, who is live at the scene. Nicole, you've been there all day. What can you tell us?
Well, I can tell you, when police first arrived here at the scene, residents tell me that they bypassed the two front doors, walked along the side of the home into the backyard where the shooting happened. Now, one thing community leaders, residents, and Fort Worth police all agree on is that law enforcement responded to this home for a well-being check, but they don't agree on why police shot and killed their neighbor.
She was the cool aunt who stayed up till 2 a.m. playing video games.
And that's what 28-year-old Atatiana Jefferson was doing in the overnight hours with her nephew.
The hardest part about this is I spoke with an 8-year-old who explained what it was like inside of the house.
Just before 2:30, James Smith, a neighbor of the East Allen Avenue home, called the non-emergency Fort Worth police number when he saw his neighbor's doors ajar.
And informed them that my neighbor was an elderly, sickly lady, and I was concerned for her health.
But when police arrived, Smith recalls no lights, no sirens, no officers identifying themselves.
3 or 4 tactical officers come from around the corner, seemed like. Walk across the street, go in front of her house, past the front doors, which were open, go down the side of her house to the rear of her house. In less than a minute, I heard a gunshot.
Fort Worth police confirm an officer shot and killed Jefferson. They followed up that information with a 1-minute, 20-second clip of body camera video. It shows officers moving along the side of the home into the backyard with flashlights shining, and then this.
Put your hands up, show me your hands.
We went from a welfare check to a woman being killed by the cops.
Shot through a screened window. Fort Worth officers later releasing images of a firearm inside the home.
There was nothing nefarious or illegal about owning a firearm, and they presented in no way that that firearm was contributory towards the use of deadly force here.
Community leaders and neighbors are rallying around the family, who has declined to speak with the media, leaving it to activists to share their outrage.
This is one I cannot swallow. We are not target practice for nobody.
But our voice is going to be heard this time.
Jefferson was an Xavier University graduate working in medical cells, holding down the fort while her mother was in the hospital. And a neighbor, just trying to be a good neighbor, left feeling like this.
I feel guilty because had I not called the Fort Worth Police Department, my neighbor would still be alive today.
But with the demand for answers, justice, and a call for an independent investigation, many in the community say an indictment is the right call.
That's murder.
Through a statement, Fort Worth police say they are committed to transparency, going on to say, in part, the officers observed a person standing inside the residence near a window. Perceiving a threat, the officer drew his deputy weapon and fired one shot, striking the person inside the residence. Officers entered the residence, locating the individual and a firearm. In the meantime, community activists are calling for a federal independent investigation. They also say they want the interim police chief to step down. We're live in Fort Worth tonight. Nicole Jacobs, CBS 11 News.
Put your hands up. Show me your hands.